From the chaos of the Iowa caucuses, Bernie and Mayor Pete emerge atop this scrappy field of Democrats. As the fight for the nomination moves to New Hampshire, can frontrunner Joe Biden survive back-to-back disappointments?
I never thought a word would sound so good. It's called total acquittal.
It was a monster week for the president. With the impeachment threat in his rearview mirror, can Donald Trump ride the momentum to another 4-year term? And here at home, a career criminal out on bond claims the lives of 3 innocent victims. Are they just the latest collateral damage of Harris County's radical drive toward bail reform? I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to Watch Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Bob Price, Associate Editor of Breitbart Texas. Next up, businessman and well-known columnist Bill King. In the 3 spot, Charles Blain, founder of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Batting cleanup, longtime super neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Next up, conservative attorney and Second Amendment expert Michele Maples. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin.
By the time it's all said and done, Iowa, you have shocked the nation.
By the narrowest possible margin, after a torturous tabulation process boondoggled by an epic technological fail, caucusers in Iowa chose the openly gay mayor of a smallish Midwestern city, along with an avowed socialist, just 18 months from turning 80 years old. Who Iowans did not choose may be just as significant a story, with former Vice President Joe Biden finishing a disappointing 4th.
I am not going to sugarcoat it. We took a gut punch in Iowa.
Which makes the upcoming fight in New Hampshire pretty darn critical for the once front-running Obama Veep. On Friday, the field gathered in Manchester to slug it out on the debate stage. Among many notable moments, this attack on Mayor Pete's lack of experience.
Because I think this going after every single thing that people do, because it's popular to say and makes you look like a cool newcomer, I don't think that's what people want right now. We have a newcomer in the White House, and look where it got us.
Latest polling has Sanders ahead, but losing ground to Mayor Pete. Meantime, another former mayor, witnessing the chaos, doubled his gargantuan national media buy and the size of his staff, including at least 75 new hires here in Houston. Okay, folks, what's your point? I'm going to Bob Price. I know you were kind of giggling a little bit at the Democratic debacle.
Well, you know, it was funny to watch. You know, that every vote counts if we could just figure out how to count them. Oh, they absolutely blew it in Iowa. The shock was, though, Mayor Pete coming out. Everybody said the day after that he kind of pulled a fast one by claiming victory, and he actually did win. So it was a pretty impressive move for him. That shows that he does have a well-organized campaign, because that's how you win Iowa, is with organization.
Okay, Tony, discouraged at all by the chaos and the fact that these two guys clearly outdistance everybody else?
Well, as far as the chaos goes, Julian Castro warned everybody, say, hey, why are you going to Iowa first, right? So his legacy lives on. But as far as surprises, yeah, I was shocked that Mayor Pete came in so strong. And think about it, you got 52% of the Democratic vote in Iowa was Bernie and Mayor Pete. I think that's huge. I wouldn't say that Biden took a gut punch. It was more of a standing 8 count, right? Not quite knocked out, but he's on the ropes. And again, honestly, I was never really impressed by Biden. I want to make one thing clear. Every Democrat says the same thing, and we believe it. Whoever's the nominee, we will pick. But I was really stunned that Biden came in that low. And all the gaffes we've seen, I think, are really not really appealing to people across the board.
Okay, Charles Blain and I talk about this all the time. Can the Democrats win without a moderate candidate?
I don't think they can. I mean, it's hard to pull a general if you don't have a candidate that can appeal to these large swaths of the country. But I do think the issue with Iowa is that, you know, they were so just kind of, that was a gut punch, Tony. You can't put it any other way. If the most recent VP did not come in first or second, that's a gut punch. But the problem is that because the results were so delayed, I think it kind of evened out the fall of Biden, if you will. People didn't take it as seriously because we had to wait so long for it. And then on the other side of that, it kind of stymied a little bit Pete's boon that he would have gotten after his win because we waited so long to find out about it. So I do think that they need a moderate to be able to win the large swaths of the country, but it's interesting to see Pete coming in front first. I'm going to be interested to see what happens in New Hampshire next.
Standing 8 count is worse than a gut.
Oh, okay.
We're in boxing. We're in boxing.
You knew it was coming. Republicans saying Democrats can't even run a caucus. How can they run the country? Tomorrow, Mayor Bloomberg doubling down, big bank, hiring lots of people. That was a good development for him.
I think it was an excellent development for him because the goal has to be to beat Trump, period, non-negotiable. Now, Iowa, you're an embarrassment. You're talking about a technological difficulty for 1,700 votes. You could have used the abacus. Okay, you didn't even need technology to do that. That was embarrassing. I mean, it's inexcusable, and it makes the party look just inept. As far as Buttigieg and Barney, I was shocked by both. I ain't gonna lie, neither one of them was at the top of my list. But you got to keep your eye on the prize, and it's about picking a candidate that can keep everybody together. I know for a fact the seniors that I engage with on a daily, they are not going to pick either one of those candidates.
Michele, we could have flown around the world twice, and the Democrats still didn't have those votes counted. What was your take as you watched it come out?
I was cracking up because, come on, why didn't we beta test something before rolling it out in front of the entire country? I mean, this loses all confidence. It's got to make Democrats sit back and think, you know what, if they are in control, can they properly roll out a program? Now, with regard to Buttigieg and Sanders coming in 1 and 2, we've seen Mayor Pete creep his way up. But I think with Tomaro and with Charles's point, I don't know how well he's going to do with the moderates across the country. And of course, Sanders, he doesn't stand a chance in hell. He's a socialist. No moderate is going to go for him. So what they need to do is, what Democrats need to do, if I were them, was take a good look at Klobuchar, because she's the one who looked like a true nominee and a true competitor to Trump last night or on Friday night.
Okay, Bill, if you had to write a column about this, what would be your take?
One thing I don't understand why the Democratic Party allows Iowa and New Hampshire to play the roles that they do in the Democratic primary. They're not at all representative of the Democratic demographic as a whole. I think that the damage to Biden is overstated because when we get to South Carolina, I mean, he's like ahead by 40 points or something in South Carolina. You know, the African-American base is a big part of the Democratic constituency, and there's essentially none in Iowa or New Hampshire. So he's got that firewall there. It'll be interesting to see if it holds through all this. And by the way, Buttigieg is actually a pretty attractive candidate, I think, and people keep talking about him being far left, but you actually listen to his positions, he's really more towards the middle of the political spectrum.
Yeah, but he hasn't run anything bigger than a city the size of Corpus Christi. Bob, go ahead.
I was just going to remind people that we have a history of Democrats not being able to roll out software. Remember the Obama healthcare website debacle when that came out? It took them almost a year to get that thing fixed. So actually Iowa did pretty good.
Go ahead. Let me just remind everybody that Abraham Lincoln served 1 term in Congress before he became president of the United States, and he did a pretty good job.
Okay, Tony, what do you hope to see coming out of New Hampshire?
Well, I think it was great to see Bernie have a team in Iowa deliver. I think I was also excited to see, I think you're right, Mayor Pete actually is not far left. There's maybe because he's gay, people think he's far left. He's military. He doesn't talk smack. He hasn't come up with nicknames. And his policies, he won South Bend, Indiana. Okay, he didn't win like Miami or Houston. We're talking about an industrial belt city, working class, with people who have jobs that are working check to check. I think Mayor Pete, if he's the nominee, he can deliver this.
Tomorrow, are African-American ministers and Roman Catholics going to vote for somebody like Pete Buttigieg?
No, and South Bend, just to check the record, as I'm from Gary, South Bend is a college town. Notre Dame is their theme song. That's it. So look at the average age of most of the voters, because those kids that go to Notre Dame, they register to vote there. But no, I don't believe they're going to get behind him. But the main thing is not about his sexual orientation. It's his experience. Look, we have seen what happened when you get somebody in the White House practicing. They're in there now, practicing. We want them to practice. We want a professional. We want somebody to know what they're doing.
Okay, got to go to break now. When we come back, More on the Democratic battle to face Donald Trump in the fall, plus the president takes a victory lap after fighting off impeachment. Stay with us. Let's assume Bernie and Mayor Pete prevail Tuesday night in New Hampshire, and Biden limps out of the Granite State sporting an 0-2 record. Where do the two Democrats stand on the overarching issue of head-to-head matchups with you-know-who? Hard facts. Sanders has promised massive tax hikes and the multi-trillion-dollar demolition of America's healthcare system. And frankly, he's old. More hard facts. Pete Buttigieg has never run anything but a Rust Belt town about the size of Corpus Christi, as I mentioned. And there's his marriage to another man, which even in 2020 is hard for many in this country to fully embrace.
He's married to him, yes. We need to find out if that's serious. Well, then I don't want anybody like that in the White House.
Okay, here in February, less than 9 months from the election, would anybody in this panel bet hard-earned cash on either of these two beating Donald Trump? I'll go to Bill King.
First of all, let's don't be hating on the old people. One poll I've started watching since the last election is the Los Angeles Times USC poll. It was one of the few polls that predicted that Trump was going to win last time. And what their methodology is different is they have a intensity factor that they build into the turnout models. And they called the last election almost directly on point. They are now showing that Biden is up over Trump by 9 points. Sanders is up by 4 points. Now, that doesn't sound like a big difference, but it really is, because I think Trump is almost certain to lose the popular vote. The question is, can he find that electoral college path? And at 3 or 4 points, you can find it. At 9 points, you can't find it.
Michele Maples, would you put a hard-earned dollar on either one of these guys beating Trump?
No, I would not. So with Pete Buttigieg being openly gay, look, I don't care what consenting adults do behind closed doors, and I think that's the majority of Americans. My problem with Pete is that he is a big supporter of the Green New Deal, which would absolutely tank Texas's economy. It is his policies that I think we need to be looking at, and who cares what he does behind closed doors. Bernie, he's nearly 80. He is old. You are way younger than that, Bill King.
At least a week or
We need to just look at who he would choose as vice president.
Okay, Tomaro, real quick. Either one of those two that came out of Iowa going to be the eventual
I love long shots. They're my favorite bets to make. But even on this one, I'd have to pass. I don't believe either one I'm good.
Okay.
I'd take him and Bob a lot of money.
Okay. Still ahead, the Democratic bid to oust the president fails. Will Mr. Trump emerge from the impeachment fight weaker or stronger than ever? That topic on our table after the break. Just as we all expected, given the Grand Canyon of a partisan divide prevailing in the United States Congress, the Senate voted on Wednesday to acquit the president on charges he abused his power in what impeaching Democrats called a self-serving extortion plot aimed at Ukraine and rival Joe Biden. Democrats fell 19 votes short of conviction. For his part, Mr. Trump drew support from all but one Republican senator, Mitt Romney of Utah.
The president's purpose was personal and political. Accordingly, the president is guilty of an appalling abuse of public trust.
With his vote, Romney has been rendered an outcast in his own party. Meantime, Texas Senator John Cornyn described the impeachment as a fatally flawed power grab.
9 months away from the American people voting on the direction of our country. But our Democratic colleagues don't trust the American people, so they've taken matters into their own hands.
Okay, panel, the nation's third presidential impeachment trial is now history. Was it necessary, Charles Blain?
Not at all. Not at all. We didn't learn anything new out of this. I mean, we spent months and months and months arguing the same things, and the only thing that came out of this is a more divided country, taxpayer dollars wasted because they were focused on this rather than focused on actually doing work. And the only person whose opinion was swayed was Mitt Romney's. I mean, there was just nothing beneficial that came out of this. And for the Democrats, I think they lost because the president does come out stronger now that he can literally go to his base and say, I won. And he did. And the record shows that.
Okay, Mitch McConnell said from the outset, this is not a judicial process. This is a political process. But was it necessary, Tomaro Bell?
I told you all, I did not think he should be impeached, not because I didn't believe he did anything, but because I knew what happened would happen. I knew the Senate would never impeach him. Saying that nothing came out of this, Bolton, one of y'all on with that ugly, stinking 1970 porno star mustache. He even said Trump was in on the deal. Oh, but you say nothing came out of it. That's why you wanted no witnesses. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm glad it's over. I need the country to move on. What I find appalling about it was the people that got fired. Let's take the veteran, Vindman. Okay, this man was subpoenaed. He had no choice but to come and speak. And you're going to fire him and his brother? Was he supposed to get up there and lie? Don't say nothing came out of this, because a whole lot of sheets got pulled up and you saw stuff you didn't need to see. So don't say nothing came out of this.
What change was brought about because of it?
That's
going to lose the election.
Hold on. Go ahead. Okay. Bob Price, did the president come out of this stronger or weaker?
Well, the president came out of this much stronger. His base is fired up like nobody's business. I said when they started this witch hunt on Halloween that it was not an attempt to overthrow the 2020 election. Nobody ever thought the president was going to be removed. This is the abuse of a sacred process in the Constitution to unduly influence the 2020 election. And that is not a good thing for us to go down. Now, interestingly, on the Mitt Romney issue, the state of Utah legislature has introduced legislation now to allow for the recall of a United States senator.
Okay. Tony, do you think American voters have the memory to remember what happened in January and February and actually make it matter when they decide who to vote in November?
Yes, because this draws a distinction between what Republicans admit they're used to. They're used to a corrupt president. This put it out black and white. It is clear now, too, that Republican senators are scared of him. He's now allowed to act like a socialist dictator. He is acting like a socialist dictator because right afterwards, he starts going after his own staff who basically fulfilled their legal duty to basically testify and tell the truth. I think what's really clear and black and white is that Donald Trump really thinks he is above the law. It's proven that. And what really impresses me is how much he's bothered by it. The fact that he went through and, basically canceled his team, but also wants to expunge the actual impeachment he got from the House because it hurts him. And I'm really glad that Nancy Pelosi stood up for Americans and tore up his manifesto of lies the way she did it, because he's lying. He's lying about the economy. If you think you're living large now, we need adults in the room to come in and say, America, you're living on credit cards because you're basically giving away the future by going deeper and deeper in debt. It's been a powerful week for Democrats because the truth is out about Donald Trump. Voters will self-correct America come November.
Michele Maples, what do you think of that narrative?
Okay, so our economy is stronger than ever. We have the lowest unemployment rates in our history. So the fact that you're saying that the economy is not doing well is just simply untrue. I mean, let's take a look at the State of the Union where he blasted all these numbers out. Oh, and let's look at the job report that came out on Friday with the American economy adding hundreds of thousands of new jobs. And who are those new jobs for? The middle class, the people who need these jobs, because if Bernie gets elected, he's just going to raise their taxes and they're going to need those jobs. And then with regards to the Mitt Romney issue, Utah was 47% in 2016 for Trump. So I think he's probably on his way out.
Close us out, Bill.
Let me just say first on the economy. If you make me president, give me historically low interest rates, and let me spend $1 trillion more than we're taking in, my economy would look pretty good as well.
Right. Really, Obama had $2 trillion and he couldn't do it.
Want to bet?
Well, that's
hold
actually
on,
not true. His
Exactly.
average GDP was
Living on
higher
credit
than
cards.
Trump's has been. But let me say this. I think that nuance is going to be completely lost in the American public. And so I think Trump is going to go in with a good economic record from a political standpoint. I think the impeachment has backfired on the Democrats, and I think it was evident in these state house races that we saw here in Houston. The Republican base was much more fired up than the Democratic base was. Now, whether that lasts November or not, I think is questionable.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Still ahead, cleared of charges. The president, Donald J. Trump, takes a victory lap. Stay with us. Watch your point. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the immediate aftermath of his acquittal, the president gathered his faithful for a White House victory celebration, during which Mr. Trump unloaded on his accusers in no uncertain terms.
It was all
Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Mitt Romney all took heavy fire from the president, but they all still have their jobs. Friday, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who testified before Congress, was escorted out of the White House for good fired from the NSC in what his lawyer is calling an act of retaliation. Hours later, word that Ambassador Gordon Sondland was also hit with the axe. What did you think of that, Tomaro?
Let me tell you, the firing of the soldier, that really bothered me. Not only that, to show what petty president did to make it even worse, he fired his twin, who had nothing to do with this. That just show you how petty he is. Now, I knew he was going to fire his crazy friend who was over there in the Ukraine, who came on TV and was so happy to be on live TV. He was just like, yep, he knew, we knew, everybody knew, but it's okay. But to go after this soldier who did what he's supposed to do by law, okay, you can't ignore a subpoena. It just shows how petty he really is.
Let me ask somebody whose husband does wear the uniform. What was your reaction to that?
Fully justified. All of these people serve at the pleasure of the president. These are appointees. He can hire and fire whoever he wants, just as he did with the prior Ukrainian ambassador. He didn't like her, he can fire her. He doesn't like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, he can fire him. And what's really troubling about Lieutenant Colonel Vindman is that he potentially leaked confidential and privileged information. And if you have one iota of a thought that somebody is leaking information, they have to go. I don't care if they wear the uniform or not. They don't belong in that position.
Okay, you know, it sends a strong message, and this is a president who values loyalty. Do you think it'll come back to bite him?
Yeah, we're going to vote him out because of this and many other things. And of course, he's always extolling all these socialist dictators, including Putin, who's a dictator, Erdogan, who's a dictator. He's taking notes from Kim Jong-un on how to act like a leader. This is what he thinks leaders are supposed to act like. He likes strong men. He really now thinks he's above the law because he's bullied the Senate into covering up whatever he does. And it was really sad to see America stoop this low to give Rush Limbaugh one of our most important, you know, distinctions when you got Tuskegee Airmen in there too. I mean, he should not take a lap. He needs to take a walk into the wild blue yonder and step out of office now.
We're going to talk about State of the Union.
He's embarrassed at the election.
Still ahead, the president tells the nation America is stronger than ever, but are voters buying what he's selling? We'll discuss the State of the Union when we come back. Okay. As weeks go, it was a grand slam for Donald J. Trump. On the night before he would cruise to acquittal in the Senate, the president delivered his fourth State of the Union address, an 82-minute stump speech, both boisterous and flamboyant, aimed squarely at those who will decide his fate come November.
In just 3 short years, we have shattered the mentality of American decline, and we have rejected the downsizing of Americans' destiny. The average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any administration in the history of our country.
Woo! Bob, I guess you like that.
Well, I think the American people like that. The unemployment rate is at the lowest, but more importantly, low-income wages are rising more rapidly than white-collar jobs are. The economy is helping the people that need the help the most. And all this talk about it's only helping Wall Street is just not true. The issue is that the president is doing a great job on the economy. He's doing a great job on foreign policy. He's done a great job of stopping the Honduran caravans from crossing into Mexico and coming up to the United States. He built the wall, and Mexico's paying for it at the Guatemala border.
Okay, Bill King, is it the economy stupid, in quotations, Mark?
Yeah, so the economy is doing well. Again, I worry about the $1 trillion deficit, but nobody else seems to worry about it besides me. And so Trump should be coasting right now. The fact that he's 9 points behind in the Los Angeles Times USC poll tells you there's something else going on here. And basically, when you dig down into the crosstabs, what it is, he's losing suburban mothers who don't like things like BS being said on the television in front of their children. And I've talked to a lot of these ladies who are just like, I don't care if I have to pay more taxes. I'm not going to subject my children to this kind of conduct and have this sort of character held up as a role model. And so that's where he's losing the election. If he could just keep his mouth shut, I think he would coast to re-election, but he can't do it.
Charles, I talked to Republicans who say he may be an a-hole, but he's our a-hole. I don't know. You know, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, listen, 7 million jobs created, 7 million folks off of food stamps, 10 million folks off of welfare, lowest African-American, Hispanic, and Asian unemployment rates, lowest African-American poverty rates reported. Economy is great, but Bill makes a fantastic point. It's a point that I want to reiterate, is that there are a lot of communities in this country that are currently scared because they feel that they're targeted, and it's exacerbated by the rhetoric that we hear. And all the economic gains are lost when you're scared for your life a lot of times. And so one of my neighbors made this point to me, is like, black and brown communities across this country are terrified. It doesn't matter how great the economy is. So I do think we need to focus on the rhetoric and focus on making people feel better in this country, as well as the economy. And the economy is doing great, though. So.
Okay, Tony, look, Texas is a state where guys like George W. Bush have gotten 40% of the Latino vote. And Greg Abbott's done well, too. I mean, are you worried that Latinos who are conservative or middle of the road may say, hey, my life's pretty good right now, I'm voting with the guy in charge?
Latinos are going to see through the lies. If there's an increase in wages, it's not keeping up with inflation. Latinos are going to see through the lies. Latinos are not more employed than ever. They're getting deported. They're going to see through the lies. There's more Latino families separated at the border. They're going to see through the lies. There's more Latino kids in cages. So that was a hawk of lies that we heard for State of the Union. State of the Union, he should have admitted that he's mismanaging the border, and that he's really doing it and villainizing our community to win again, because people who are reasonable will not vote for him again. We're going to see through it all, and I can't wait to see Texas blue because of that man. Republicans, get your house straight or you're going to lose a state.
10 seconds each. Go.
Okay, I think that if Tony is a true environmentalist, he will stop wasting paper. Recycle, Tony.
Tomorrow, 10 seconds.
Listen, what I like people to see who watch that and watch the impeachment is to see how nobody cares about the country and they care about themselves. This loyalty that you say, you're supposed to be loyal to the country, not to a person. The Senate is loyal to keeping their ass in their offices, and that's why they voted the way they did.
Okay. Coming up, she's looking to take criminal justice reform to the next level in Harris County. Democratic candidate for district attorney Audia Jones is in our hot seat this morning to make her case. Stay with us. Watch your point. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Her name is Audia Jones, and she's running as a Democrat to be Harris County's next district attorney. Former prosecutor Jones says current DA Kim Ogg simply hasn't championed the reforms needed to reverse years of injustice inflicted on the poor and communities of color. Audia Jones, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. You say incarceration should be a consequence of last resort. What do you mean by that?
What we've typically seen historically is mass incarceration has continued to make our communities less safe. For the last 30 years, data has actually showed us that crime is decreasing while our incarceration rates are increasing. So if we really want to look at making the public safe, we need to look at making incarceration a last resort for nonviolent offenders, meaning getting them the help and the treatment that they need that would target the root issue of whatever the basis of their underlying issue, whether it's drug addiction, mental health issues, or poverty.
Audia, current district attorney Kim Ogg says she's trying to implement bail reform without compromising public safety by unleashing dangerous criminals back onto the street. How would you do things differently? Yeah, I mean, her statement just is simply not true. When we talked about misdemeanor cash bail reform, she initially supported it in her run in 2016. What we saw for majority of misdemeanor offenses and people that were sitting in jail on $2,500 bonds were in there for driving while license invalid, criminal trespass, possession of marijuana. So these are individuals who are in there for simply nonviolent offenses, and just because they cannot get out, they're almost forced to take a plea to get out and continue their regular life. So what I intend to do different is support cash bail reform moving forward, including for felony offenses that would be nonviolent offenses. Okay. This week, a young man by the name of Gregory Smith, free on minimal bond on charges of assaulting a peace officer and driving under the influence of PCP, caused an accident that killed 3 people. Now, the DA's office opposed the bond, but were overruled by the judge in the case. Would you have made the same recommendation that he be a high bond be placed?
Well, we have to look at the circumstances and say if there was a high bond that was placed and he could still afford to get out, would this unfortunate situation still have occurred? So what we need to look at is the person a threat to public safety, and if there are flight risks, then we need to go ahead and either ask for a no bond or ask for a higher bond to be placed, but looking at the individual circumstances. In that particular case, one thing we have to look at is he was already charged with driving while intoxicated, so he really should not have been driving in the first place at all.
And so the judge should have ordered one of those devices, right?
One of those devices, and the law automatically actually revokes your driving privileges as soon as you are charged with a driving while intoxicated. So legally, he should not have been driving.
Well, this guy has a PCP problem.
Correct.
Do you think he would have, well, you know, Houston Police Officer Union President Joe Gamaldi says, and this is a quote from Twitter, "Wake up, America. Innocent people are dying needlessly under ill-conceived policies and laws, all in the name of reform." Gamaldi has backed his statement with a number of cases in which people have gotten out of jail and reoffended. What's your response to that?
My response to that is we have, you know, a lot of elected officials and other individuals that will typically use fear-mongering. Even our current district attorney, when we look at the numbers simply just don't back that up. 77% of people that are sitting in jail right now in the Harris County Jail are in fact in there for nonviolent offenses that are tied to drug-related offenses. And even for the Gregory Smith case, that's something we need to look back at. Have we arrested him previously, brought him to jail, nothing's done? We cannot arrest or convict our way out of drug addiction. We cannot arrest or convict our way out of mental health issues. And this is exactly what we see from the lack of reform, is we see now they have escalated to more violent offenses where people tend to lose their life or some type of violent offense takes place. So it's time for us to do something different. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a change.
Audia, experience is an issue in this race. You are a former assistant district attorney.
Correct.
How would you describe your track record with criminal cases, and can you handle the third largest district attorney's office in the country?
Absolutely. You know, when we hear the term experience, we have to think about what is that experience rooted in. Not only the current district attorney, but some of my other incumbents have, the other opponents have tried to attack me on that point. But what is their experience rooted in? Their experience is essentially rooted in the same criminal system that we are, in fact, trying to dismantle and get rid of and rebuild. So I do not want that experience. But moving forward, it's time that we take a different perspective. As the third largest county in the United States, we deserve to be on the leading end of change. We haven't had that, and it's time for us to take the reins and move forward with true reforms that will change our community and make it safer.
Audia Jones, thanks for taking the hot seat.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Still ahead, we examine that tragic crash which claimed 3 lives and get our panel's take on the so-called cost of criminal justice reform in Harris County. Stay with us. Welcome back. Has the pendulum of criminal justice reform swung way too far in Harris County? This week, Gregory Smith, a man described by authorities as a career criminal, blasted through a red light, smashing into 2 cars, one of which burst into flames, killing a mother, a grandmother, and a 3-month-old infant. Smith, charged with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter, was free on a $100 bond after being charged with driving under the influence of PCP. That crime committed while free on bond after allegedly assaulting a peace officer. Now, given Smith's extensive criminal history, the Harris County DA's office tells us they requested a bond revocation in both cases, but Judge Genesis Draper chose to cut Smith loose pending trial, and as a result, 3 people are dead. Tomaro Bell, what do you think of this?
Listen, I said it before and I'll say it again. I do not believe that people who have written hot checks or can't get their out for tickets, I don't believe that those people should sit in jail because they cannot afford to. But public safety has to be first and foremost in everybody's mind. There is no reason this guy should have been out there on bond with everything that he's done. The same thing that applied, I don't care if you say, oh, well, they don't have enough money, we make the bond high enough. That's not the point. The point is that if you got somebody who done beat the hell out their wife, and you know that they beat the hell out their wife, and they were already on probation for beating up the last time, he should be not able to get out of jail so he can come beat up again while he out for the day. I do believe that the criminal justice needs some kind of bail reform, but they've gone too far with this because they're definitely looking more at the perpetrators than the victims.
Okay, no one wants people to languish in jail who can't make bond, especially for nonviolent offenses. But have we gone too far, Tony?
Well, that is the spirit of the law, and that's a good intention. This is a terrible example of how it can go wrong. And this guy, though, he was written up like 14 times. That's the other part. So, I mean, I can see how you made a mistake once, twice, 14 times. That is ridiculous. So there should be more common sense. They should be able to ascertain when someone is dangerous. And I don't think it's any surprise that at some point this particular individual led to this terrible calamity. We need to use our heads and keep people safe. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, Bob, quickly, what's your take on this?
Well, I don't think we should make policy based on a single case, even though this is a tragic case and a perfect example of what can go wrong in the system. But the fact is, we have way too many people in jail who should not be there, that haven't committed violent crimes, that aren't a threat to the community, and will likely show up for court, but they just can't afford to make bond. We've got to fix that. But we have to also apply common sense, as Tony said, and I'm surprised to hear him use that word, but it has to be fixed to where violent criminals who are a threat to the community or who are a flight risk need to be held without bond or at a very high bond that can't be made.
Bill, jump in here.
So I want to talk about the politics for a second of this, laying aside the merit of this particular case or anything, because I think it's interesting that two minorities on this panel are both concerned about public safety, because minority community is the most victimized community. So this is something that sort of cuts across traditional political lines. And I'll tell you, just out in the community, I hear more discussion about this issue about violent criminals being released from bail. Whether that's happening or not, I don't really know. But there is a den of conversation out there about it. And I'm going to tell you what, this could have a tremendous impact on the 2020 elections.
We're going to keep an eye on it. Still ahead, can a convicted felon stay on the runoff ballot in a race to serve on Houston City Council? State judge says yes. Reaction from our panel after the break. Welcome back. Convicted felon Cynthia Bailey will remain on the ballot in the runoff election for District B's seat on Houston City Council. That was the ruling of Special Judge Grant Dorfman, who says third place finisher Renee Jefferson failed to, quote, conclusively prove Bailey's ineligibility. State law appears murky on the issue, and Jefferson says she's still weighing her legal options. In 2007, Bailey was convicted and imprisoned for stealing more than $200,000 from North Forest ID with some co-conspirators. If this latest ruling stands, she will face top vote getter Tarsha Jackson in a May 2nd runoff. Lay it on me,
Listen,
Bell.
I said it before and I said it again. This never would have happened in A. This never would have happened in E. Okay, this never would have happened in D.
Why?
But the problem, because if those people had went out there and somebody had applied like that, they would have made sure they didn't get on the ballot. I'm telling you, it would have been stopped. The problem is the ambiguous law as stated. Because to say, for Judge Dorfman, who Bill said they respect, you're going to say she didn't prove a case. It's supposed to be, if you're a convicted felon, you can't run. If you're a convicted felon, went to jail and stole money from a public institution that serves children, how much evidence more did you need? Was that
okay, Charles Blain, that was good.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy to me. Airbnb has rules against letting people rent who have felony convictions. No, I mean, it's true, though. They do. And, renting cars, all these things become difficult when you have a felony conviction, but you could run for public office after stealing from a public entity. I think that's crazy. And to argue, like you said, if the state law is clear that if you have been convicted of this, you cannot be on the ballot, and Renee Jefferson Smith, I would think, has argued that case pretty clearly, how is she still on the ballot? Then what happens if she's elected? Does that open another Pandora's box where now the election is challenged? Can she take office? If she can't, does Jerry Davis still hold over? I mean, it just opens up so many questions, and these people aren't being represented right now.
Michele Maples, what's your take?
Okay, I'm going to set the law aside, and let's look at this individual. I would be ashamed of myself if I stole 200 grand from an ISD, and I would never show my face in public ever again. The audacity for this individual to want the people to trust her with public resources is absurd. Go back home, shut the door, and get out of public service, because you can't be trusted with money.
The argument is she's redeemed to some degree. Anyway,
Well,
Bill, go ahead.
So look, this is a legal question. By the way, the judge that heard this is Grant Dorfman, who is one of the Republicans that got beat in the last election, a highly respected jurist. And what he found was that the state law is ambiguous about whether or not being convicted of a felony permanently disqualifies you or not. And he said, based on this ambiguity, I'm not going to overturn the results of an election, which is the bias that all judges have. So this is a problem that needs to be fixed at the state legislature. Now, what's wrong with the people in District B that voted for somebody that stole $200,000 from school district? I've got no answer to that question.
Okay, we ran out of time. Still ahead, it was probably inevitable. Fears over the coronavirus have rippled into the Bayou City, an important topic on the table after the break. Growing concerns here and across the globe over the deadly coronavirus. The disease has killed more than 600 people and infected more than 31,000 others, mostly in China, prompting mass quarantines and cancellation of most international flights. The ripple effect of concern hit home here in Houston with completely unsubstantiated rumors and a noticeable absence of normal commerce in the Asia Town business district.
There are no cases of the coronavirus in the state of Texas. There are no cases of coronavirus in Harris County, and there are no cases of coronavirus in the city of Houston.
Leading by example, now dining with his family regularly in Asia Town to extinguish baseless fears. I'm going to Bob Price. Thoughts?
I've been covering the coronavirus since the outbreak first came out, and the mortality rate in this infection is very low. It's actually 2%, and it stayed flat at 2% throughout this whole thing. So that's the problem, is that people don't get that sick, and so they're out walking around with it and passing it around to people, and you can actually pass it around even if you're not symptomatic. There have been cases in Germany that were confirmed where people weren't symptomatic at all and caught the disease. But the president has done a good job of containing it here from expanding throughout the U.S. with CBP's actions at the border and ports of entry.
Bill.
I agree with everything Bob said. I also was proud of Gene for doing this. I thought it was an important thing to do. Let me put this in perspective. Since the coronavirus outbreak, 800 people have died from the virus. 60,000 people have died from the flu.
Right.
72,000 people have died from malaria, and 150,000 people have been killed in car wrecks. If you're really worried about this, don't go get in your car today.
Got about 40 seconds left. Go.
One of the problems that they're having right now in China is that in Wuhan, that is where 3M's factory, where they make the N95 medical masks that you need. And so that's why they desperately in need of supplies, because the people are not allowed to go to work, so they can't go to work. And that's why they're coming to the U.S. to ask for additional services, because they don't have the material to protect the citizens.
Charles Blain.
To Bill's point, you're going to die from the flu before corona. Get a flu shot if you're scared about anything.
Exactly.
Wash your hands before you eat. People are so concerned about corona, but they don't do those things which you can do to stave off sicknesses.
Okay, I got 10 seconds.
Also becoming a bit of a vegan issue, because people have associated the disease with the eating of bats and pangolins, which I never heard of. So go vegan.
Okay. Anything
Most
to say?
trafficked animal.
Don't
in the
eat
world.
bats. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
Wash your hands.
We're going to leave it right there. The discussion of all things political continues now on Fox News Sunday with host Chris Wallace. Have a great week.